this briefing. I now give the floor to Mr. Martin Griffiths. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and I want to thank also Hans Grunberg for your tireless efforts, Hans, and your crucial aim at a lasting solution for the people of Yemen. Very good to be on with you today. Mr. President, my first briefing to the Security Council as the Emergency Relief Coordinator nearly 3 years ago now in August 2021 was on Yemen. It seems fitting that I should speak to you on Yemen today for one of my last briefings in this function. During these last 3 years, there have been moments of great hope. The UN brokered truce, thank you to Hans, in 2022, and the resulting gains is undoubtedly one of the rare bright moments that we see in our world today. Yemen is not out of the woods, as Hans has said, far from it, but it remains a country where things have deteriorated quickly in the past and where they can do so again and equally can be recovered. Hunger, a defining menace of this crisis, continues to haunt the people of Yemen. Modest improvements in food security, malnutrition rates following the UN brokered truce are all but gone. Levels of severe food deprivation remain alarmingly high across the country and are expected to worsen further when the lean season starts in June. The progress made by the WFP on its retargeting pilot in areas under Ansar Allah control is a positive development, but it needs further progress. Mr. President, we're also deeply concerned about the rapidly worsening cholera outbreak. 40,000 suspected cases, and over 160 deaths have so far been reported, a sharp increase since our update last month. Majority in areas under Ansar Allah control, where hundreds of new cases are reported every day. Heavy rains and flooding expected to make things worse. The UN and our partners are taking urgent action to stem the spread, and that includes the development of what we like to call a multi-cluster response plan. And I'm sure we can give you details of what a multi-cluster response plan looks like in writing on request, in close collaboration with the authorities. This will need rapid funding if we're to prevent the situation from spiraling out of control. The consequences of inaction are, of course, familiar. Let's not forget that between 2016 and 2021, some 4,000 people in Yemen, mostly children, lost their lives to cholera. Mr. President, in this context, it was very reassuring to have the reaffirmation of the international community's commitment and support for the people of Yemen at the 6th senior officials meeting held in Brussels last week. Several donors used this opportunity to announce financial contributions totaling $792 million for this year. And we thank them for their generosity. This funding is critical for saving lives and addressing urgent humanitarian needs. Mr. President, it is equally vital to make meaningful progress on essential conditions for Yemen to move beyond reliance on humanitarian response and humanitarian assistance. The first, and this is where Hans's leadership is so central and crucial, is stability and peace, as he has said. Conflict in Yemen has been the key driver of humanitarian needs, not the only one, but the key one. It has deeply undercut the country's economy, and thus Hans's work, as he put it, on the banking sector is of central importance to this issue. It's decimated half of Yemen's health facilities, displaced millions of people, and as I have said already, allowed hunger and disease to prosper under these circumstances. And in the past 2 years, there has been, however, under Hans's leadership, with the help of governments in the region and beyond, a comprehensive political settlement may be seen in outline. Progress is fragile, of course it needs to be protected, but it needs to be nurtured, and we are there to support in any way that the Office of the Special Envoy requires. The last 7 months of misery and pain in the wider region, of course I'm referring to the conflict in the Middle East and Gaza have added to instability in Yemen. Attacks on vessels in and around the Red Sea have disrupted global trade, but we must not let developments in the region and the Red Sea stand in the way of peace in Yemen. And that's why I know from the right at the beginning of this particular crisis, Hans and his team were insistent on the need for protecting the gains that have been made and moving back towards that ceasefire. Mr. President, the other driver of major humanitarian needs in Yemen is the protracted economic crisis, linked, of course, to the absence of peace. Rapidly rising food and fuel prices continue to erode families' purchasing power. So the second priority has to be to shore up Yemen's economy. My own colleague, Julian Harness, the resident coordinator and humanitarian coordinator, is also working on this. And we have developed a framework aimed at encouraging the creation of jobs and livelihood opportunities. And we are supporting economic reforms as already described by Hans at the national and local levels. But the parties to the conflict need to do their part. It's time to put an end to hostile economic measures, put the interests of the people of Yemen first. Oil exports must be allowed to resume immediately. This would stabilize the local currency and reinforce essential public services in areas under the control of the government. Public sector employees across Yemen must be paid a living wage. It will be simply impossible to restore public services without doing so. And these clearly defined measures, often discussed very clearly a priority in international action, would go a long way towards reducing humanitarian needs, moving away from reliance on humanitarian aid and building for the authorities in Yemen their own control of their own future. Mr. President, finally, and members of the Council, Yemen is a place dear to my heart, of course. It pains me to see its people being dealt one blow after another, and that many of the things that I called for and that we've heard from Hans each time in the briefings to the Council are still relevant today. Protection of civilians, unhindered humanitarian access, funding for the operation of the aid agencies, more support for the economy, and most important of all, progress towards that lasting peace. After almost 10 years of grueling conflict and overwhelming odds, the people of Yemen deserve a break for the better. And frankly, the world deserves to see that conflicts may be resolved on the basis of justice and the popular desire for peace. I am one of those who continue to believe that progress is possible, the opportunity is there. It will require all our support and sustained attention for the efforts of the Special Envoy, his team, the governments in the region, and the members of this Council. Mr. President, I thank you.
I thank Under Secretary General Griffiths for his briefing.